I spent some time recently nerding through literally every part of Adobe After Effects. Set out on a mission, happily obsessed, married with After Effects user guide, few books, articles, courses, YouTube guides and projects later. For a very basic understanding of the program structure before digging into your first smaller projects, Part 1, Basic Navigation in After Effects, should most likely have your back, giving you a quick overview. When first firing up After Effects, we land at this start page, giving us the option to either reopen a recent project, if having one already, or we can start a blank new one. Hitting that new project button, this is what it looked like, but for the sake of this tutorial I will open just a recent one. There are currently 5 visual main windows or panels, plus the top menu, that make up the whole interface in After Effects. Right now, we're viewing the default workspace as a bit of combination of everything you see within this space. The area in the middle here is called composition. Furthest down, we got the timeline. To the very left, the project panel. And to the very right, few different useful tabs or groups of panels. And a very handy toolbar at the top. Then at the very top, you got the top menu. And whenever you're clicking on a window panel, it becomes active, indicated by this blue frame around it. Imagine the composition as a big screen and reflection of what you're doing or creating in the timeline using layers, like a large adjustable screen connected to your timeline canvas painting, then showcasing your creation while using the project panel as a kind of shelf filled with all your stunning footage. The group panels as your lovely assistants, and the very handy toolbar with anything else necessary to help compose or construct the project. Use the composition to view and combine elements from different type of sources as one image, just making it appear as it's actually part of the same whole scene. Either down in the timeline or directly adjusting the layers, like moving its position or scaling it up and down inside the composition, while accessing a few useful different options down here at the very bottom. But for now, as a start, it should probably be enough to know about the zoom, where fit is a useful one. We got the resolution, which is kind of wise to lower in those bigger projects when you got several layers or when using high resolution footage to just not overload your computer and keeping everything running butter smooth. Rest we save for later down the line in part 2. The structure or basic pillar, if you will, of all creation in After Effects happens within the timeline, where the magic of your footage, your shapes, the text, and anything else in the form of layers come together. It's where the creative work or painting happens, if you will, while you can see the effect of it and also be able to kind of fine-tune it a little bit directly within the composition, like a big canvas or as a combination of many different ones. In After Effects, these layers function as building blocks for everything you want to create while viewing and adjusting their timing on the very right. If something is missing in the timeline or you perhaps want to hide something, these 4 small icons to the bottom left let you toggle or change the visibility for the different columns. It's also reached by right-clicking up in this field, the columns, to each layer having several type of options or properties attached to it whenever we pressing this little arrow here on the very left. These 5 standard transform properties are likely the ones you will be using the very most in After Effects whenever you are creating any type of animation, or with other words, change over time. As the animation is such a large part within After Effects, I will quickly go through the very basic of keyframes here within the timeline. Then in part 2 I will explain everything within full details. But keyframes decide where a layer or that which is attached to a layer is moving from one point in space and time to another point in space and time. Basically, seeing this stopwatch beside a property, that means that you can animate it over time. And moving forward to 1 second and pressing the stopwatch here, this is where the text layer called navigating will be at 1 second. If we then go back to 0 seconds again and drag up the text by just clicking, holding and dragging it upwards, we automatically create a new keyframe by moving the layer or position property of it. Either you adjust it directly down here in the properties section or directly within the composition. We can press spacebar for a playback and you will see it move into frame from point A to point B in 1 second time. A frame means a single image in a sequence of pictures, which lined up together creates the basic movement and video. Then drag the keyframe a little bit further in to the left, and the animation goes faster and vice versa if we drag it a bit more to the very right. This was the most basic linear movement within After Effects using keyframes, but should give you quite a good start at least. But further down the line, we'll be digging into easing, for example, with just slower starts and slower stops, creating a bit more realistic and natural type of movement. We'll also be digging into the graph editor, which let us create almost an endless amount of different varieties or different variations of movements. Really nice. Moving on to toggle the layer's visibility, hiding and showing it with this eye icon to the left. Solo it as the only layer visible, or we can also lock it so it's not movable at all, and plenty of other options. Now on the right side of the timeline, you have the current time indicator or playhead that dictates what time you are currently positioned at and is reflected in the composition above. The whole time span here is currently set to 1 minute and is the whole length of the current composition. Each layer consists of a certain time span, which the length or width of the boxes represent. As you can see at the top, where the seconds and sometimes even down to single frames represent. For example, the very first text layer here will last for 10 seconds. If or whenever you want to see a layer for a longer or shorter time, you may drag either the beginning or end of it to be able to adjust it. The layers work in hierarchical order, so the layer stacked at the top will be the first visible to the ones below. But speaking about the layers render order as the very process of exporting or processing your project into a final video or image sequence, the layers will be prioritized or first rendered from the very bottom to the top. At this moment, all layers end before the next begins, except for the 3 layers at the very top. But if we duplicate the first layer called navigating, going to edit and pressing duplicate, and then turning this one into red, it's always the one at the top showing when we change the order. And if you ever need to select 2 or more layers, just hold down Command or Control at the same time and just press and drag the mouse cursor to be able to move them around. A few more quick things that's good to know about here in the timeline are the zoom down here. So we can just drag it to the right to zoom in and to the left if we want to zoom out. The work area, which is the space within this highlighted area, and adjusted by dragging in the ends and moving it around. Really handy or quite necessary whenever you're working within a project, and especially in those larger projects or larger timelines when you have loads of different type of layers stacked up, because your computer needs to process or cache using your computer RAM every time you want to preview this section or duration within a timeline. So the Workspace just lets you do this in smaller sequences, in smaller steps instead, which is a lot more efficient. Finally, having the valuable search bar here at the top and giving you the option to search for and filter pretty much anything, such as a specific layer, an animation, or a property attached to a different type of layer. Then the project panel is the home to or collection of all your assets to include in the project, adding all your footage, audio and other necessities over here. And you can just drag and drop it directly from your computer folders. To save time and always make sure that I'm using high quality footage, sound effects, music, both for this project and for any other project, check out what I'm using via the link in the description down below. We may also add footage by right-clicking and choosing Import. Then, for example, File and Open. I like to keep this just as tidy and organized as possible. It just makes it so much easier and faster to be able to navigate around, and especially just saves a lot of headache as well. Then just name everything appropriate and color code them if needed. The project panel also has this great search function, making it quick and easy to find pretty much anything, just as within the timeline. Imagine that you're collecting your different colors for building or painting the creative canvas project here before adding them to the very timeline. For the group panels, you will keep all other panels as components to be able to see information about a layer. You can make specific adjustments, a little bit depending on which panel is in actual use, or you might spice it up whenever reaching for your very lovely effects and presets. So see this window as your several handy assistants. But unfortunately, or perhaps luckily, you still need to control them and get assistance from them one at a time. It's quite basic right now in the default window, but if changing the workspace to, for example, all panels, you will often have more than needed. I'll keep it on for the sake of this very course, but sometimes less is more, and it just keeps you from getting tangled up trying to find all those tabs you thought of coming back to later. Then we have the tool panel, which is the last direct visual window and has some helpful properties you easily access to help create, change, animate, navigate, and more inside the very composition and timeline. Each tool icon having this little mark down in the right corner has a bit more hidden variations to it, and you can just press and hold over it to be able to see the rest of all the options. This last part completes our very staging of presenting the main interface and suitably introducing Disney's 12 principles of animation, intended to create more realistic, engaging and lifelike animations, being the first one, but more correctly, third principle of animation, staging, ensuring clear presentation of an idea, focusing on what is important in the scene, like when working with blur and focus. The other 11 valuable principles will be included throughout the whole video and just completing all the missing puzzle pieces within part 2. Overall, in the interface, you can access different pre-made workspaces or layouts, and a little bit depending on your needs and preferences. But you may access several different ones here at the very top. Just press these 2 arrows and you will be able to see even more, plus options on how you want to arrange them in Edit Workspaces. Don't like any of the pre-made ones? Just create your own personal layout. For example, dragging out the panels to your liking in the corners, or moving a whole panel just to a completely new place. Go into Window, Workspace, save as New Workspace. And just deciding you don't want it anymore, just head back to Edit Workspace and press the Delete. The search field on the very top right gives you direct access to the support at helpxadobe.com, just giving you valuable direct access to support, communities, learn and product information. A good place to start whenever feeling a bit lost or overwhelmed whenever you're navigating around in After Effects. Hopefully you shouldn't though after seeing this whole full video, but if so, you go to the Help panel. And it's also recommended to just have a quick look at Adobe's Learn After Effects tutorials to just get help on specific topics, either in-app or online. The top menu is just like a bunch of drawers with different hidden goodies. A multitude of different things can be found up there and just help you elevate different settings or help you with a lot of stuff within a project. We just need to learn sometimes how to be able to navigate and look within this kind of organized chaos, if you will. Like the search field before, you might want to check out the After Effects help and user guide, where I spent much of my time recently, or check out the online user forums for friendly, hopefully, support. YouTube can of course also be a great alternative in some cases, and if something missing in the workspace, you likely find it under the window menu. And if it's not already marked, just press what's missing and it pops up as a new panel. In the view menu, you can apply or adjust different options depending on which layer or window you're highlighting or marking. For example, marking the project panel, everything will be grayed out at the moment, but whenever highlighting the timeline panel instead, you will have several different alternatives. It goes all the way down to layer and dimensions. And for example, when you're working in 2D, as here for the text layer, as soon as changing the layer to 3D, just ticking this little box here, you suddenly have a few more choices. Overall, some valuable things here are the show rulers to just help create a little bit of symmetry or line up text and shapes. The zoom in and out in the composition and the resolution. Quickly access the same options down here in the composition. You get the zoom, resolution and rulers. Very handy. With the animation menu, many options are tied to and available a little bit depending on what layer you are highlighting or using and what you want to accomplish with it. A lot of them are also found under each layer in the timeline panel or just under specific panels in the very grouped panel window on the right. Then a tip here is to use the Save Animation preset. This one is especially useful whenever you are creating animations that you might think that you're going to repeat in the very future. Very nice. And this could be anything from color grading to a specific type of movement in the animation. In the effect menu, you will find all applicable effects for your footage and layers, which also may be found over here in the group panel window if selected as visible. Depending on your preference, first mark the layer you want to apply the effect to, while in the effect panel either just double click, applying it to the layer, or you can just drag and drop it over in the timeline or in the composition. Moving on to the layer menu, most of the drop-down applications or add-ons is specifically tied to a certain layer here as well. So depending on what layer you're having selected, you might have a few variations on what is applicable and what is actually grayed out. And most of these you also find when you're right-clicking on a layer. And a useful feature or option here is the pre-compose. This just letting us group layers together or nesting them as one. And both handy for keeping the timeline a bit more tidy, while also giving you a few more alternatives to be able to animate a combination of layers at the very same time, or in other ways that are either really hard or sometimes even impossible to do with single-handed layers. The composition menu is quite an important one to know about in After Effects, since we find a few main components over here. For example, you dictate your resolution and the FPS or frames per second in the composition settings, either with presets or custom made, changing the frame rate and also the duration of your whole composition, as well as the background color you prefer working within the composition. And another option to know about, and perhaps more importantly that actually someone else outside of your very After Effects file know about your project, is the Add to Render Queue, which just lets you render or export your finished project into usable computer files. Some alternatives to choose from, like the render settings. We have the output model for changing the format, and it really boils down to, or it's dependent on your needs and preferences between how you want to balance out the file size versus the quality, as a really high quality footage may look super great, but it might also be the actual only file that you can fit on your computer. So you need to make that adjustment depending on the needs and preferences. Lastly here, whereabout we want that output to go to, what actual computer folder we're adding that finished file to. Under the edit menu, there are many useful things here in the very top half. And if you're serious about learning After Effects and be able to navigate a lot faster, it's very good to at least learn the basic keyboard shortcuts. But overall, check out the keyboard shortcuts if you want to just speed up the workflow in your projects and just work a lot easier. Just making animation and edit process smoother and more enjoyable as well. Another useful tip, if you ever experience any type of problems concerning, for example, After Effects performance issues, the so-called Purge is a very good option or bucket for this one. Just cleaning up and throwing up that cache and old memory, just preferably after finishing that late night project. The file menu is quite a must to know about, since having many of the base functions over here. Anything from creating new projects to be able to actually save them. And yes, that's a very good habit to remember to save on a regular basis. At times you may be lucky and that autosave will have your back, but when it doesn't and you just lost a few of those hard-working hours, perhaps smash that Control or Command S a few more times than not. And backups. Always use backups. We find the import function here for your footage and export, similar to under the composition drop-down, but with some extra type of options. Lastly, having the very After Effects menu, where you find the valuable settings and preferences. A list of 20 different subcategories, tweakable or adjustable as you like. The default ones will normally be good enough when you're starting out in the program, but if you need to do a few adjustments or changes to any settings, at least you know where to find them. Even though After Effects might seem a little bit complicated or almost scary when first introduced to it, if you're still with me and have gone this far, well done. By now you should have a basic understanding of how to navigate to at least get started. However, if you feel like something is missing, want to avoid all those how-to searches, or just want to be guided all the way through the After Effects rabbit hole, navigating and understanding every aspect of the program like a pro, stay for part 2, in-depth navigation in After Effects as well, covering every single detail in the most effective and easy to understand way possible, navigating the whole interface and its connected hidden depths. At the same time, going through how to create butter smooth animations with both shapes and text, the graph editor, working in 2D using AI for content aware fill, exploring 3D space with a full understanding of the camera and light, explaining complex topics with animations and visuals, complete tracking course, essential graphics, rotor brush, animating with the puppet pin tool, using Lumetri scopes for color correction and grading, dragging on the VR glasses, getting into virtual reality environment, while rounding it all off with some favorite keyboard shortcuts for all parts to navigate even faster, plus so much more. Feel free to jump around between the different parts and sections shown in the timestamps via the description down below. Wanting to throw in the towel many times, I finally hope you will enjoy and get an overflow of value from this course by avoiding or at least minimizing a long and sometimes painful learning curve. So get yourself a coffee or tea if you haven't already, and let's dig into it.